Alan Spector here, along with the Budman, Melissa, and Chris. And every Thursday morning at this time, we bring you On Law with attorney Tom Olsen. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Alan and crew and WFLA listeners.
Tom, if you've been following the news very closely this week, you might have heard there was a presidential election on Tuesday. And you might have also heard we don't know who won it. And you might have also heard this thing may wind up in the courts. What's the deal with that? Where do you see this going?
Alan, that's the big issue is, will the United States Supreme Court have an opportunity to weigh in on our 2020 presidential election? Remember that the U.S. Supreme Court is the final court of appeals, and it has the discretion as to which cases it wants to hear. Usually those cases come from lower court rulings like state Supreme Courts. And Alan, we've got a couple of great examples of that.
Yeah, we've had, in fact, recently some rulings by the Supreme Court regarding how long votes can be counted, and the High Court seems to be on either side, depending on what the case is.
Well, Alan, just last month in October, you might remember that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that any absentee ballots that were postmarked by Election Day and received up to 3 days later would be counted. That Pennsylvania Supreme Court case was appealed to the United States Supreme Court. Of course, that was before Judge Barrett was appointed. And the United States Supreme Court ruled 4-4. It was actually a tie, and therefore the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling stood. And that's why today Pennsylvania absentee ballots will be counted through Friday. So that's just last month. So U.S. Supreme Court made a big decision that's going to affect our 2020 presidential election.
And it's been 20 years since an election went before the U.S. Supreme Court. Of course, that was the famous Bush v. Gore case. And kind of refresh our memory on that. It's been, as I said, 20 years. It was in the year 2000 when that happened.
Well, in 2020, the Florida Supreme Court ruled that the undercounted votes, that amounted to 61,000 votes that were not tabulated by the machines, where there would be a recount of those votes. The Bush campaign immediately appealed that Florida Supreme Court decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. The 5 conservative justices on the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Bush campaign. Recount was over. Bush was successful and was our president in 2000.
Tom, let me ask you a question about the current court, which now includes, of course, Amy Coney Barrett. Now, before she was confirmed, President Trump said he wanted her on the court in case the election came up before the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, might that be grounds for someone to ask for Amy Coney Barrett to recuse herself in this case?
I don't think so, Alan. I think that would really set a bad precedent. Alan, I'm an attorney, and I put a lot of faith and confidence in our judicial system, including the United States Supreme Court. Whether, in spite of the fact that she was appointed by President Trump, I still think that she's going to be a good Supreme Court justice, as they all are, and any cases that end up before the United States Supreme Court, I have full faith and confidence in each of their abilities to decide it based on the law, not on their political leanings or who happened to appoint them to the court.
Is it your feeling, Tom, just based on your opinion, is this going to wind up before the Supreme Court?
Well, Alan, what makes the 2020 presidential election such a legal minefield is, once again, due to the COVID virus. States were looking for ways to make voting in 2020 easier and safer. That included a lot of mail-in ballots, and it included, like Pennsylvania, accepting those ballots that were postmarked by Election Day but received up to 3 days later, make them be counted. And so Trump's framing of any legal challenges is going to be this, is that any change to the voting procedure in 2020 is unconstitutional because it is open to fraud. So that's the legal arguments he's going to be framing in the lower courts, the state courts, and those are the cases that might very well be appealed to the United States Supreme Court.
All right, Tom, anything else you want to add on this before we let you go?
Well, Alan, we'll be speaking in 1 week from today, and hopefully we're going to know the answer.
Yes, that would be nice to have some answers.
Yes.
At least in a week.
Well, remember, in 2020, in the year 2000, Bush versus Gore, that election was not decided until mid-December. So far we're doing good.
All right. Attorney Tom Olsen will be back with us 1 week from today on Good Morning Orlando at this time. And as always, Tom, you'll be answering listeners' legal questions this Saturday at 1 p.m. on Olsen on Law on News Radio WFLA Orlando. Tom, thanks so much.
Thank you, Alan.
And remember, for all of your legal needs, call the Olsen Law Group in Orlando. And for more Good Morning Orlando, keep it right here. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Perfect.